Please pretend you're my dad, homeless girl whispered. What the hell's Angel did next left everyone in tears. It was a Friday evening at a truck stop diner on the outskirts of nowhere. The kind of place where the neon sign flickered more than it stayed lit, where the coffee was always burnt, and where people passing through tried not to make eye contact. Marcus Hawk Sullivan was sitting at the counter, nursing his third cup of that terrible coffee, when he saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, with matted brown hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. She was standing near the bathroom hallway, her eyes darting around nervously, and there was something about the way she held herself, small and scared, and trying to be invisible, that made Marcus pay attention. 25 years of riding with the Iron Skulls MC had given Marcus a sixth sense for trouble. He'd learned to read people, to spot danger before it walked through the door, to know when something was wrong even when everything looked normal. And right now, everything about this situation felt wrong. The little girl kept looking toward a booth in the corner where two men sat, both in their 40s, both with the kind of cold eyes that Marcus recognized from his darker days. One was heavy-set with a shaved head, the other thin and nervous, constantly checking his phone. They weren't watching the girl directly, but Marcus could tell they were aware of her, tracking her movements while pretending not to. Marcus was 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and scars, with a beard that reached his chest and arms covered in tattoos that told stories he'd never share with strangers. His leather vest bore the patches of a lifetime in the motorcycle world, including the one that said Road Captain and the one that marked him as a founding member of his chapter. He was the kind of man mothers pulled their children away from in parking lots, the kind of man security guards watched carefully in stores, the kind of man people crossed the street to avoid. But the little girl was walking straight toward him. She moved slowly, like she was trying to gather courage with each step. Her shoes were too big for her feet, held together with duct tape, and her jacket was thin despite the cold October air outside. When she reached Marcus, she stopped, looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young, and whispered 5 words that would change both their lives forever. Please pretend you're my dad. Marcus froze. In his entire life, spanning 4 decades of hard living, rough riding, and choices he'd never be proud of, no one had ever asked him to be anything remotely paternal. He was the enforcer, the fighter, the man the club sent when problems needed solving the hard way. He'd never been married, never had kids, never even thought about having kids. Children were something that happened to other people, people who lived normal lives in normal houses with normal jobs. But this little girl was looking at him with such desperate hope that Marcus felt something crack in the armor he'd spent decades building around his heart. If this moment hit you harder than you expected, drop a comment saying, "Stay strong, Maya." Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. "What's your name, kid?" "Maya," she whispered. "Maya Rodriguez. And those men over there, they said they'd take me to a shelter, but I heard them talking. They're not taking me to a shelter. Please, I've been on the streets for 2 months since my mom died, and I know bad people when I see them. You look scary, but you don't look bad. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense to Marcus. He'd spent his whole life looking scary. But this little girl had somehow seen through the leather and tattoos and scars to something underneath, something he'd thought he'd lost years ago. Marcus shifted on his stool, angling his body to put himself between Maya and the 2 men in the corner. "Those men give you any money? Buy you any food?" "They bought me a burger. Said they were youth counselors. But youth counselors don't talk about merchandise and finding buyers." "I'm little, but I'm not stupid. Smart kid. Street smart kid. The kind of intelligence that came from surviving situations no child should ever face." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, the kind of cold, focused anger that had made him dangerous in his younger days. He'd done a lot of things in his life that he wasn't proud of. He'd hurt people, scared people, crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But there were still some lines even he wouldn't cross, some evils that made him want to burn the world down. "Okay, Maya, Marcus said quietly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit on this stool next to me. You're going to order whatever you want to eat. And you're going to trust me for the next hour. Can you do that? She nodded and climbed onto the stool beside him, her feet dangling 6 inches above the floor. The waitress, a woman in her 50s named Dolores who'd worked at this diner for 20 years and had seen everything, came over with a pad. The little one eating, Hawk? She's eating. Bring her whatever she wants, and keep it coming. Charge it to my tab. Maya's eyes went wide. She looked at the menu like it were written in gold. I can really order anything? Anything on that menu, kid. You look like you haven't eaten in a week. 3 days, Maya said quietly. The shelter ran out of food, and I was scared to go to another one because that's where those men found me the first time. They volunteer at shelters. That's how they find kids. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard he heard his teeth grind. He pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping his eyes on the 2 men in the corner. They'd noticed Maya sitting with him now, and they looked confused, uncertain. Good. Uncertainty made people make mistakes. Marcus scrolled through his contacts and found the number he needed. He pressed the dial and waited. Yeah, a gruff voice answered. Tank, it's Hawk. I need the crew at Mel's Diner on Route 9. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? The kind that involves a homeless 7-year-old girl and 2 predators who were about to traffic her. The kind where we need numbers before I do something that gets me arrested. There was a pause. Then Tank's voice came back, harder and more focused. We're rolling. 15 minutes. Don't do anything stupid before we get there. Marcus hung up. Maya was ordering pancakes and eggs and bacon and orange juice and toast, speaking in a small voice like she was afraid someone would take it all away. Dolores was writing it down with tears in her eyes, and when Maya finished, Dolores leaned across the counter and said, Honey, you take your time eating all that. Nobody's rushing you. And if you want seconds or thirds or fourths, you just let me know. The 2 men in the corner were having a heated conversation, keeping their voices low but their body language tense. The heavy-set one kept looking toward the door. The thin one was texting rapidly. They were making plans, adjusting their strategy. Marcus had seen this before, the way predators adapted when their prey slipped away. They wouldn't give up easily. People like this never did. Maya's food arrived in record time. She ate like someone who didn't know where her next meal was coming from, which Marcus supposed was accurate. She didn't talk while she ate, just focused on the food with an intensity that broke his heart. He'd been hungry before, back when he was young and stupid and living on the streets himself before the club found him. He remembered that desperation, that fear that the food might disappear if you didn't eat it fast enough. Maya, Marcus said gently, those men who bought you a burger, they tell you their names. She swallowed a mouthful of pancakes. Dale and Rick. Dale's the big one. Rick's the skinny one. They said they worked for a program that helped homeless kids. They had business cards and everything. Business cards. Of course they did. Predators didn't survive by looking like predators. They survived by looking like helpers, like good Samaritans, like people you could trust. Marcus felt sick. Did they take you anywhere before coming here? They picked me up at the shelter this morning. Said they were taking me to a better place, one with more resources. We drove for a few hours. Then they stopped here and said we were meeting someone who could help. But then I heard them talking outside while I was in the bathroom. Dale said, she's perfect, young enough, broke enough, nobody will miss her. And Rick said, the buyer's going to love this one. So I ran back inside, and that's when I saw you. Stay with me until the end, because what happens when Marcus makes one phone call will turn this diner into a rescue operation that saves more than just Maya. The rumble of motorcycles filled the air exactly 14 minutes later. 7 Harleys pulled into the diner parking lot, ridden by men who looked like they'd ridden out of a biker movie. Leather, chains, patches, scars, the kind of presence that made normal people very nervous. But Maya didn't look scared. She looked relieved, like the cavalry had arrived. Maybe she understood that sometimes the scariest-looking people were the safest ones to be around. Tank was first through the door. He was shorter than Marcus, but built like his namesake, with shoulders that barely fit through doorways and fists like cinder blocks. Behind him came Razor, Smoke, Diesel, Chains, and two prospects whose road names Marcus could never remember. They filled the diner, making it feel suddenly small, and every patron except Maya looked terrified. Tank took one look at Maya sitting next to Marcus, her face covered in syrup, and his expression softened in a way that would have surprised anyone who didn't know him. Then he looked at the two men in the corner, and his expression went glacial. Those are the ones. Those are the ones, Marcus confirmed. Dale and Rick were already standing, moving toward the door, trying to look casual. Tank and Razor moved to block their path. The diner's other patrons were frozen, uncertain whether to stay or run. Dolores, the waitress, had her phone out, finger hovering over 911. "Hold on, Dolores," Marcus called out. "We're going to handle this right. No violence, no property damage. Just good citizens making sure these gentlemen answer some questions." Dale's face had gone red. "I don't know what you think is happening here, but you need to move." "What I think is happening," Tank said calmly, "is that you were about to sell a child. What I think is happening is that you prey on homeless kids because you figure nobody will miss them. What I think is happening is that today you made a mistake." "You can't prove anything," Rick said, his voice shaking. "We're youth counselors. We have credentials." "I'm sure you do," Marcus said. He'd pulled up his phone and was recording now. "Maya, can you tell these gentlemen what you heard them say outside the bathroom?" Maya set down her fork. She looked at Dale and Rick, and something in her young face was older than it should have been. "Dale said I was perfect, young enough, and broke enough, and that nobody would miss me. Rick said the buyer was going to love this one. They were going to sell me." Rick lunged toward her. "You little—" He didn't finish the sentence because Diesel's hand clamped around his wrist like a vice. Diesel was the club's sergeant-at-arms, responsible for security and discipline, and he did not take kindly to men threatening children. "I'd finish that sentence really carefully if I were you. Now," Marcus said, "here's what's going to happen. Dolores is going to call the police. You two are going to sit back down in that booth and wait for them. My brothers here are going to make sure you don't go anywhere. And Maya is going to finish her breakfast in peace. Everyone understands." Dale tried to play it tough. "You can't hold us here. That's kidnapping." "Citizen's arrest," Tank said cheerfully. "Perfectly legal when you witness someone attempting to commit a felony. And attempting to traffic a minor is definitely a felony." Dolores was already on the phone with 911. Marcus could hear her giving the address, describing the situation, and asking for officers to respond immediately. He pulled out his own phone and made another call, this one to a number he'd hoped he'd never have to use. A woman answered on the second ring. "Detective Sarah Chun, State Police." "Detective, this is Marcus Sullivan. You told me 2 years ago that if I ever came across anything involving child endangerment, I should call you directly." There was a pause. "Marcus? What have you got?" "2 men attempted to traffic a 7-year-old homeless girl. We've got them contained at Mel's Diner on Route 9. Local police are en route, but you said you wanted to know about this kind of thing personally. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let them leave, and for God's sake, don't hurt them. I need them in condition to stand trial." "They'll be pristine," Marcus promised. The local police arrived first, 2 officers in a cruiser who looked very uncertain about walking into a diner full of bikers. But Marcus knew one of them, Officer Davis, who'd once pulled him over for a broken taillight and ended up having a decent conversation about motorcycles. Davis recognized him and visibly relaxed. "Hawk," Davis said. "Dispatch said something about attempted child trafficking?" Marcus gestured to Maya, who was working on her 3rd helping of pancakes. "This is Maya Rodriguez. She's been homeless for 2 months since her mother passed. These 2 gentlemen, Dale and Rick, picked her up at a homeless shelter this morning, claiming to be youth counselors. Maya overheard them discussing selling her to a buyer. They have business cards claiming to be from a youth outreach program, but I'm guessing those cards are fake." Davis's partner, A younger officer named Torres was already pulling out handcuffs. "You two, hands behind your back. This is harassment," Dale blustered. "We haven't done anything wrong." "Then you won't mind if we check your phones," Davis said. "Verify your identities. Make sure everything's legitimate." The look on Rick's face said everything. He knew what was on his phone. He knew what they'd find. He made a break for the door, but Chains was standing there, all 6'6" and 300 pounds of him, and Rick bounced off him like he'd hit a wall. "Easy there," Chains said. "You're going to hurt yourself." Detective Chun arrived 22 minutes later, driving an unmarked sedan at speeds that were probably illegal. She was a woman in her early 40s, Korean-American, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for never giving up on a case. She'd worked sex crimes for 15 years and had a particular hatred for child predators that was legendary in the state police. She walked into the diner, saw the situation, and her face went through several emotions in quick succession. Surprise at seeing the Iron Skulls present, concern about jurisdictional issues, and then grim satisfaction when she saw Dale and Rick in handcuffs. "Marcus," she said, "tell me everything." Marcus did. He explained how Maya had approached him, what she'd overheard, and what she'd told him about Dale and Rick's operation. Chin listened without interrupting, taking notes, her expression growing darker with each detail. When he finished, she turned to Maya. "Maya, honey, I'm Detective Chun. I work for the state police, and I help kids who are in trouble. Can you tell me exactly what happened today? Start from when you woke up this morning." Maya set down her fork again. She looked exhausted, like telling this story was taking everything she had left. But she did it. She explained how she'd been staying at the River Street shelter for the past month, how Dale and Rick had shown up yesterday, saying they were recruiting for a better program, how they'd seemed nice at first, but something felt off, how they'd picked her up this morning and driven her for hours, how she'd overheard their conversation and run. Chin recorded everything on her phone. When Maya finished, Chin said, "You are incredibly brave, Maya. What you did today, running and asking for help, took courage. I want you to know that you're safe now. Nobody is going to hurt you." "But I don't have anywhere to go," Maya said quietly. "The shelter won't take me back because I left with them. They have rules about that." "We'll figure that out," Chin said. "For now, let's make sure you're healthy and safe. I'm going to have an EMT check you over, make sure you're okay physically, and then we're going to find you a place to stay where you'll be protected." She turned to Davis and Torres. "I'm taking custody of these two under state authority. This is part of a larger investigation into trafficking networks. I need you to preserve the scene, collect their vehicle as evidence, and get me copies of all your reports." Davis nodded. "You got it, Detective." Chin pulled Rick's phone from the evidence bag Torres had placed it in. She scrolled for maybe 30 seconds, and her face went from grim to murderous. "Marcus, I need you and your friends to step outside with me for a moment." In the parking lot, away from civilian ears, Chun turned to face the 7 bikers. "That phone has messages discussing at least 15 children over the past 8 months. Names, ages, prices. There are photos I can't unsee. This isn't just 2 predators. This is a network, and it's bigger than I thought." "How big?" Tank asked. 6 states big. Multiple handlers, multiple buyers, multiple pickup points. The shelter they were working out of is in my jurisdiction, but the operation spans beyond it. I'm going to need help." Marcus understood what she was asking before she asked it. "You want us to look into it. Use our connections, our presence in places cops can't go." "I can't officially ask you to do that," Chin said carefully. "But if certain information happened to come my way through unofficial channels, I wouldn't question where it came from." Tank grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. "We can't have people trafficking kids in our territory. Bad for business. Bad for the soul." If this moment made you realize sometimes justice needs help from unlikely places, hit like so this message spreads. Chun handed Marcus a card with a number written on the back in pen. "That's my direct line. It's not connected to any official system. If you find something, call me. I'll handle it from there. Make sure it's done legally and properly. And the girl? Marcus asked. Maya? Where does she go? Emergency foster placement for tonight, Chin said. Then we'll work on something more permanent. But Marcus, she trusted you. She saw something in you that made her feel safe. Would you be willing to check in on her? Just so she has a familiar face during all this chaos. Marcus looked back at the diner where Maya was visible through the window, still eating pancakes like she was fueling up for a long journey. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I can do that. 3 days later, Marcus found himself sitting in a family court waiting room, feeling like he'd accidentally walked onto another planet. The walls were painted cheerful colors. Children's drawings covered a bulletin board. There were toys in one corner and parenting magazines on the tables. Marcus, in his leather vest and boots, felt like a wolf in a nursery. Maya's caseworker, a woman named Jennifer Park, called him back to her office. She was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 30, with kind eyes and the exhausted look of someone who cared too much in a job that broke hearts daily. Mr. Sullivan, she said, gesturing to a chair that was definitely too small for him. Thank you for coming. Call me Marcus. Mr. Sullivan was my father, and he was an asshole. Jennifer's lips quirked. Okay, Marcus, I wanted to discuss Maya with you. She's asked about you every day since the incident. She's scared, she's traumatized, but she specifically wants to know if the big biker man is okay. Something in Marcus's chest did that cracking thing again. How's she doing? Physically, she's malnourished and has some dental problems from malnutrition. Emotionally, she's struggling. She has nightmares. She won't sleep unless the door is open and the light is on. She's terrified of men in general, with one notable exception. Me. You. For some reason, you're the only adult male she's willing to be in the same room with. Her foster family is wonderful, but she won't talk to the foster father. She barely talks to me, but she's drawn you about 20 pictures. Jennifer pulled out a stack of drawings from a folder. Marcus looked through them. They were children's drawings, stick figures mostly, but he recognized himself in every one. A big figure with a beard standing next to a small figure. In some pictures, they were holding hands. In one, the big figure was standing between the small figure and some threatening shapes. In another, they were eating pancakes. She wants to see you, Jennifer said. Now, I have to be honest, this is unusual. We don't typically encourage ongoing contact between rescued children and civilian rescuers. But Detective Chun has vouched for you strongly, and Maya's therapist thinks it might help her process the trauma if she can see that you're real and safe and not going anywhere. What do I have to do? Marcus asked. Background check, which you've already passed. Supervised visits here at the center, at least initially. Basically, spend time with her, let her see you're stable and consistent. Be the safe person she thinks you are. I'm not really the safe person type, Marcus said. I've got a criminal record. Did Chin tell you that? She did. Assault, weapons charges, possession with intent to distribute, various other charges from your 20s and 30s. But nothing in the past decade, nothing involving children or vulnerable people, and several character references from law enforcement who say you've been clean for years. I've done things, Marcus said quietly. Things I can't undo. Things I'm not proud of. We've all done things, Jennifer said. But what you did at that diner was save a child's life. Maya sees you as a hero. She needs that right now. She needs to believe that someone will protect her. So Marcus started visiting Maya twice a week at the Family Services Center. They'd sit in a playroom with bright walls and soft furniture while a caseworker observed from a respectful distance. At first, Maya just stared at him like she was checking to make sure he was real. Then she'd sit next to him, not quite touching, just being near. Gradually, over weeks, she started talking. She told him about her mother, who died of an overdose after fighting addiction for years. She told him about the shelters, about being scared and hungry and cold. She told him about the other kids she'd met on the streets, some of whom had disappeared and never come back. She told him about her dreams, which were full of men with cold eyes and locked doors. Marcus mostly listened. He wasn't good with words, never had been. But he could sit still, be present, let Maya talk or not talk as she needed. He learned that she liked drawing, that her favorite color was purple, and that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because animals didn't hurt you on purpose. Do you have kids? Maya asked him during their 5th visit. No, Marcus said. Never have. Why not? Didn't think I'd be good at it. My father wasn't good at it. Figured it was hereditary. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think you'd be good at it. You're nice to me. You make it easy, kid. During this time, Marcus and his crew were working on their own investigation. The Iron Skulls had chapters in 12 states and connections in places law enforcement couldn't reach. They put out word through their network. Watch for anything involving missing kids, trafficking operations, predators working out of shelters, or youth programs. Report back to Road Captain Hawk. The information came in slowly at first, then faster. A chapter in Nevada reported a suspicious van that kept showing up at homeless camps. A chapter in Texas had a member whose sister worked at a shelter and had seen questionable volunteers. A chapter in Tennessee had busted up what looked like a grooming operation at a truck stop. Marcus passed everything to Detective Chun through secure channels. She coordinated with law enforcement across multiple jurisdictions. The investigation grew larger than anyone had expected. It turned out Dale and Rick were just foot soldiers in an organization that had been operating for years, moving children across state lines, selling them to buyers who ranged from individuals to larger networks. If this darkness is hard to read about, imagine living it. Comment, not on our watch. So this story reaches people who can help. The first major raid happened 6 weeks after Marcus met Maya. Based on information from the Iron Skulls and Chin's investigation, law enforcement hit 5 locations simultaneously across 3 states. They recovered 8 children, arrested 12 people, and seized enough evidence to indict 20 more. But the operation wasn't over. The network was larger than that, more sophisticated. It had survived for years by staying decentralized, by using legitimate organizations as cover, by moving carefully and quietly. Shutting it down completely would take months, maybe years. Maya's nightmares got worse after the raid. Even though she was safe, even though she was in a good foster home with people who cared about her, the knowledge that her captors had been part of something so much bigger traumatized her all over again. She stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. Her foster parents were worried. Her therapist was worried. Jennifer Park was worried. She's asking for you constantly. Jennifer told Marcus during an emergency call. She says she needs to see you, that you're the only one who makes her feel safe. I know this is asking a lot, but would you be willing to increase your visits? Maybe come 3 times a week instead of 2. Marcus didn't hesitate. I'll come every day if it helps. So he did. Every single day, Marcus showed up at the Family Services Center. Some days Maya talked. Some days, she just sat next to him and drew pictures. Some days she cried, and he'd sit there feeling helpless but present, letting her know she wasn't alone. One evening, about 3 months after that day at the diner, Maya looked up at him and asked, "Do you think my mom would be mad at me?" "Mad at you? For what?" "For being on the streets. For getting taken by those men. For not being smarter." Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the chest. "Maya, listen to me. None of that was your fault. Not one single bit of it. You were surviving the best way you knew how. You were 7 years old and alone and scared, and you did everything right. You ran when you needed to run. You asked for help when you needed help. You trusted your instincts. Your mom would be proud of you." "You really think so?" "I know so. You're the bravest kid I've ever met." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I wish you could be my dad." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He'd never wanted to be anyone's father. He'd never thought he was capable of it. But sitting there with this little girl who'd survived hell and was still somehow hopeful, who'd looked at a scary biker and seen safety, who drew pictures of him protecting her, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "Maya," he said carefully, I'm probably not dad material. I've done bad things. I live a rough life. I ride with a motorcycle club, and that world isn't always safe or clean or legal. But I'll tell you what, for as long as you need me, I'll be here. I'll show up. I'll protect you. I'll be whatever you need me to be. That's when Jennifer Park knocked on the observation window and gestured for Marcus to come out. In her office, she had papers spread across her desk. I need to ask you something, she said, and I need you to really think about your answer before you give it to me. Okay, Maya's current foster placement is good, but it's temporary. She needs a permanent home. We've been looking for relatives, but her mother had no family, and her father was never in the picture. That means Maya goes into the system full-time, probably multiple placements, until she ages out, unless someone steps up to adopt her. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You're asking me to adopt her? I'm asking if you've thought about it. I know it's insane. You're a single man with a complicated past and a lifestyle that's not exactly conventional. But Marcus, I've been doing this job for 8 years. I've seen hundreds of foster kids and dozens of potential adoptive parents. And I have never, ever seen a child bond with someone the way Maya has bonded with you. She feels safe with you. She trusts you. She needs you. I don't know how to be a father. None of us know how to be parents until we are. We figure it out as we go. But I've watched you with Maya. You're patient. You listen. You show up consistently. You let her set the pace. Those are the most important things. The court would never approve it. Look at me. Look at my record. Actually, Detective Chun has already put in a recommendation. So has Maya's therapist. So has the foster family she's with now. They all believe you're the right choice. It wouldn't be easy. You'd have to jump through hoops, pass home inspections, go through parenting classes, and submit to regular check-ins. But if you're willing to try, we're willing to work with you. Marcus looked at the pictures Maya had drawn of them together. In every single one, she was smiling. Can I think about it? Take a few days. But Marcus, don't take too long. Maya needs stability. She needs to know someone wants her. That night, Marcus called an emergency church meeting at the Iron Skulls clubhouse. Church was what the club called their formal meetings, the times when they discussed serious business. Every patch member in the territory showed up. Marcus stood at the front of the room, facing men he'd ridden with for decades. I need advice, he said. The little girl from the diner, Maya, needs a permanent home. Child Services is asking if I'd consider adopting her. The room went silent. Then Tank spoke up. Do you want to adopt her? I don't know. Part of me thinks it's crazy. I'm not dad material. I've got a record. I live rough. I ride with you lunatics. But another part of me thinks about that kid being alone in the system, bouncing from home to home, never having anyone who's really hers. And I can't stand it. What's Maya want? Asked Razor. She wants me to be her dad. She said so. Then there's your answer, Tank said. Look, Hawk, we all know your history. We know you've done bad things. Hell, we've done them with you. But we also know who you are now. You've been clean for a decade. You work an honest job at the auto shop. You help people when they need it. You saved that little girl's life, and now she needs you again. So what's the problem? The problem is, I'll screw it up. What if I'm like my old man? What if I hurt her? Chain stood up. He was the club's oldest member, in his 60s, with grandchildren and a lifetime of wisdom. You won't hurt her because you're afraid you'll hurt her. Your father didn't have that fear. Abusers don't worry about becoming abusers. The fact that you're scared of screwing up means you'll probably be just fine. She deserves better than me. Maybe, Chain said. But she's not getting better. She's getting you, or she's getting the system. And brother, I've seen what the system does to kids. It chews them up. At least with you, she's got someone who gives a damn. The vote was unanimous. The Iron Skulls would support Marcus if he chose to adopt Maya. They'd help with whatever he needed, whether it was fixing up his house to pass inspections or providing character references, or just being there when things got hard. Marcus called Jennifer Park the next morning. I'll do it. I'll adopt her. Tell me what I need to do. The process took 6 months. 6 months of background checks, home inspections, parenting classes, psychological evaluations, court hearings, and endless paperwork. Marcus sold his motorcycle and bought a reliable truck. He sold his small apartment and rented a house with a yard and a good school district. He filled the house with furniture that didn't come from thrift stores, with books and toys and everything a 7-year-old girl might need. The Iron Skulls threw themselves into helping. Tank built Maya a bookshelf. Razor painted her bedroom purple. Smoke, who had a daughter of his own, taught Marcus how to do little girl hair. Diesel installed security on the house that would make Fort Knox jealous. Chains gave Marcus every piece of fatherhood advice he'd learned over 40 years. During those 6 months, Marcus kept visiting Maya every day. He told her about the house he was getting ready for her. He showed her pictures of her room. He let her pick out decorations and choose paint colors and decide where things should go. He wanted her to know this was really happening, that he wasn't going to disappear, that she was going to have a home. "Why are you doing this?" Maya asked one day. "I mean, really, why do you want me?" Marcus thought about how to answer that. Finally, he said, "Because you asked me to pretend to be your dad, and I don't want to pretend anymore. I want it to be real." The adoption was finalized on a Tuesday in March, exactly 7 months after that day at the diner. The courtroom was packed with people. Jennifer Park, Detective Chun, Maya's therapist, the foster family who'd cared for her, and 15 members of the Iron Skulls MC, all wearing their best attempt at respectable clothing. The judge, an older woman named Patricia Morrison, looked over the paperwork and then looked at Marcus. "Mr. Sullivan, I've reviewed your history. I've read the reports. I've considered the recommendations. I want to be clear about something. If I approve this adoption, you will be this child's father in every legal sense. You will be responsible for her well-being, her education, her health, her safety. You will be the person she depends on completely. Do you understand that?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you believe you're capable of that responsibility?" "I'm going to give it everything I have." Judge Morrison smiled. "That's all any parent can do. Based on the evidence before me, based on the recommendations of the professionals involved in this case, and based on Maya's clearly stated wishes, I'm approving this adoption. Maya Rodriguez, you are now legally Maya Sullivan." "Mr. Sullivan, congratulations. You're a father." The courtroom erupted in applause. Maya threw herself at Marcus, him with a strength that belied her small size. Marcus picked her up, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "Dad." That word hit him harder than any punch he'd ever taken, harder than any crash he'd survived, harder than any violence he'd experienced in a lifetime of living rough. "Yeah, kid," he whispered back. "Dad." If this moment brought tears to your eyes, even just a little, tap like and share so more people see that families come in all forms. The first few months were harder than Marcus expected. Maya had nightmares every night. She was terrified of being left alone. She had panic attacks in crowds. She struggled in school because her education had been interrupted by homelessness. She had medical appointments and therapy appointments, and check-ins with social workers. She needed structure and routine and patience and love, and Marcus had to learn how to provide all of it. He made mistakes. He fed her junk food because he didn't know how to cook proper meals. He was late picking her up from school because he lost track of time at the auto shop. He didn't know how to help with homework or how to handle a little girl's emotions, or how to talk about her mother without making her cry. He felt like he was failing constantly. But he showed up. Every single day, even when it was hard, even when he had no idea what he was doing, Marcus showed up. He learned to cook by watching YouTube videos. He learned to do hair by practicing on wigs that the guys at the shop bought him as a joke. He learned about school projects, permission slips, the difference between light-up shoes and regular shoes, and why purple was the best color in the world. The Iron Skulls became Maya's extended family. Tank taught her to throw a punch. Razor taught her to draw. Smoke taught her to ride a bike. Diesel taught her about engines. Chains told her stories about her dad when he was young, carefully edited stories that made Marcus sound cooler than he'd actually been. They showed up to her school events wearing their colors, and if the other parents were scared of them, Maya was proud of her biker uncles. Detective Chin stayed in touch, too. The investigation into the trafficking network continued for 2 years, ultimately resulting in 73 arrests across 8 states and the recovery of 42 children. Maya's testimony, given carefully and with the support of her therapist, helped convict Dale and Rick, who each got 40 years in federal prison. Maya's nightmares gradually decreased. She started sleeping through the night. She made friends at school. She joined the soccer team. She got straight A's. She drew pictures that were no longer dark and scary, but bright and full of hope. She laughed more. She smiled more. She started to heal. On the first anniversary of her adoption, Marcus threw her a party at the clubhouse. The Iron Skulls decorated the place with purple streamers and balloons. There was cake and presents, and all of Maya's friends from school, looking wide-eyed at the bikers who were serving them juice boxes and playing party games. Maya's foster parents came. Jennifer Park came. Detective Chin came. It was chaos and noise and joy. At one point, Marcus found himself standing outside, watching through the window as Maya laughed with her friends. Tank came out to join him. "You did good, Hawk," Tank said. "I got lucky. She's a good kid. She's a good kid because you're a good dad. Don't sell yourself short." Marcus didn't say anything. He was thinking about that day at the diner, about a scared little girl asking him to pretend to be her father. He was thinking about all the ways his life had changed since then, about how he'd gone from being a lone wolf to being responsible for another human being, about how terrifying and wonderful that was. "You know what the best part is?" Tank said. "You broke the cycle. Your old man was a piece of garbage who hurt you. You could have become him. A lot of guys do. But you didn't. You became something better. You're giving Maya everything you never had." Maybe that was it. Maybe that was why he'd said yes, why he'd fought so hard to make this work. Because he knew what it was like to be unwanted, to be scared, to be alone. And he'd be damned if Maya ever felt that way again. Inside, Maya was opening presents. She ripped through wrapping paper with abandon, squealing over dolls and books and art supplies. But her favorite gift came last, from Marcus. It was a leather jacket, kid-sized, with Maya Sullivan embroidered on the front and Iron Skull's princess on the back. She put it on immediately, swimming in it because Marcus had bought it 2 sizes too big so she could grow into it. She stood in front of the mirror, struck a pose, and said, "I look like you, Dad." "You look cooler than me," Marcus said. "That's impossible. You're the coolest." That night, after the party ended and the clubhouse was cleaned up and Maya was asleep in her purple bedroom, Marcus sat in his living room and thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the mistakes he'd made, the people he'd hurt, the years he'd wasted. He thought about how close he'd come to being just another statistic, another biker who died young and violent and alone. But he'd gotten lucky. He'd been given a chance to be something better, something more. A little girl had seen past his scars and his leather and his reputation to something worth saving. And in saving her, he'd somehow saved himself. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was brief. "Marcus Sullivan, this is James Chun, Sarah's brother. My niece is missing. Been gone 3 days. Police say they're looking, but I know how this works. Can you help?" Marcus looked at the message for a long moment. Then he forwarded it to Tank, to Razor, to the whole crew. Within minutes, his phone was blowing up with responses. They were already rolling, already putting out feelers, already starting the search. Because that was what they did now. The Iron Skulls had always been a brotherhood, always protected their own. But now their own included any kid who needed help. They'd become an unofficial network of protection, using their connections and their presence and their willingness to go places law enforcement couldn't go to find lost children, stop predators, shut down trafficking operations. It had started with Maya. It had grown into something bigger. Detective Chun coordinated with them officially now, using them as eyes and ears in the places she couldn't reach. Other law enforcement agencies had caught on, carefully reaching out when they had cases that needed unorthodox help. The Iron Skulls had become an unlikely ally in fighting trafficking, and it had changed them. They still rode. They still lived rough. They still had their reputation. But now they had a purpose beyond just existing, beyond just surviving. They had kids to protect, families to reunite, and predators to stop. And they were damn good at it. Marcus texted back to James Chun, "We're on it. Send me everything you have. We'll find her." He heard Maya's door open, heard her little feet padding down the hallway. She appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed bear, looking sleepy. "Dad, I had a dream. Can I sleep with you?" "Yeah, kid. Come on." She climbed into bed next to him, curled up under his arm. "Dad, are you going to help find someone?" "Yeah, a little girl who's missing. You'll find her. You always do." Marcus hoped she was right. He thought about all the children they'd helped over the past year, all the families they'd reunited, all the predators they'd stopped. They didn't catch all of them. Some kids they found too late or not at all. But they tried. They fought. They gave everything they had. "Dad," Maya said sleepily. "Yeah. I'm glad you were at that diner." "Me too, kid. Me too." Maya fell asleep quickly, safe and warm and loved. Marcus stayed awake longer, thinking about James Chin's niece, about how they'd find her, about how they'd bring her home. He thought about Detective Chin's words from that first day. Sometimes justice needs help from unlikely places. The Iron Skulls were definitely unlikely. A motorcycle club, rough men with rough pasts, not exactly who you'd expect to be protecting children. But maybe that was the point. Maybe redemption didn't look like people expected. Maybe heroes didn't always wear badges or capes. Sometimes they wore leather and rode Harleys and had scars and records and histories they couldn't erase. But those histories didn't define them anymore. What defined them now was what they chose to do with second chances, with opportunities to be better, with scared little girls who trusted them to protect the innocent. Marcus pulled Maya closer, feeling the weight of her trust, the responsibility of being her father, the terror and joy of loving someone this much. He'd spent 40 years believing he wasn't capable of love, of family, of being anything more than what his father had been. Maya had proven him wrong in the space of 5 whispered words. "Please pretend you're my dad." Except it wasn't pretend anymore. It was real, the most real thing in his life. And he'd spend the rest of his days making sure she never regretted trusting him, making sure she knew she was safe, making sure she understood that families came in all forms and love could be found in the unlikeliest places. Outside, he heard motorcycles rumbling to life. The crew was already mobilizing, already starting the search for James Chin's niece. Marcus would join them in the morning after he got Maya to school. But for now, he stayed where he was, holding his daughter while she slept, grateful for the chance to be better, grateful for the little girl who'd seen something worth saving in a scary biker at a diner, grateful for every moment of this imperfect, beautiful, terrifying life. And somewhere out there, another child was waiting to be found, waiting to be saved, waiting for someone to care enough to look. The Iron Skulls would find her. They always did. Because that was their code now, their purpose, their redemption. Not on our watch. Never on our watch. If this story reminded you that courage comes in unexpected forms and families are built through love, not biology, share it so others can remember that sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts, and sometimes pretending to be someone's dad is the first step to becoming the father they need. That's a code even outlaws can live by.